As you can tell, Jeff is being
Oh,
the bodacious cowboy for
yeah,
this amazing Halloween morning. I want to thank everybody for coming in. We're going to be talking today as an extension from Friday's wins and lessons that Jeff actually went and met a customer last week. And it's really important to actually have that in person, face to face. So, Jeff, let's get into it. Let's dive deep into it and let's give some people some strategies on what they do and kind of learn a little bit more of what they do as well.
yeah, let's do it.
To the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
I want to say big good morning and happy Halloween to Jenny. I know Lisa will definitely be coming on here as well. Today's, it's kind of crazy, Jeff, to kind of think about, like we're already at Halloween already. The next thing for
Crazy.
Americans is going to be Thanksgiving, Christmas, and then it's going to be like, oh my God, like we're back in Q1, right? Like
Oh,
like this weekend, it really kind of hit me, like, like it's really, the year is really ending now. How do you kind of feel on that end as well?
oh, yeah. I mean, it's like warp speed, really. I mean, if you watch Star Trek, I mean, when he pushes that button and things just start flying by you. I mean, really, I mean, that's what it feels like. It feels like we were just in summer, and then the
It's
summer's over, and then September's gone, and now October flew by, and here we are on the cusp of freaking November, and then it's going to be Thanksgiving, then Christmas, New Year's. I mean, it's like it'll be here before you know it. It's
It is, and
unbelievable.
you
It's
know what we
crazy.
always kind of say? We always say like every year, like every year flies by and things like that. Because I just remembered like yesterday, legit writing my 2022 goals, and kind
Oh,
of like okay, kind of planning out and things like that. But Jeff, what'd you get up to on the weekend, my friend?
oh man, it was when apple picking, went to a casino, won a little bit of money. It was great to get out. I haven't been walking much at all, and you know, struggling with weight and exercise and stuff. Let me tell you, I walked like several miles this weekend and it
That's
was
really good.
great. I was a little achy this morning, but it felt great to be achy. Let me tell you. And so I'm gonna keep it up this whole week. I'm gonna chisel out an hour to go walking every single day, man. That's my goal. So it was a good weekend, something that I haven't done in a long time, and it was great to spend it with family. So
That's awesome, man. That's
how about
honestly
you?
really.
How about you? What did you do?
Yeah, we went to a wedding reception on Saturday night.
Oh, nice.
It was amazing to kind of see because it was actually like my best friend from high school. So that was over 20 years ago. We were just actually
Wow.
reminiscing about it, and it's kind of cool because she actually got married to her high school sweetheart. So it's spending time with family, just meeting new people,
Yeah.
and just having fun. Yesterday we were complete. The one big lesson I learned, Jeff, was that I can't hang like I used to when I was 20 years old from the liquid courage. So
But
yesterday
you,
was a
you, you tried though. Come on now.
oh,
You
we
tried.
tried. Oh, we tried. We tried to bust that bar, but
It's okay
the
to
bar
fail
won.
as long as you tried.
Yeah, we definitely tried. So, Jeff, like last week, we talked about it. Like you said, last Tuesday, I believe that you went away to Texas. And a big thing for me, I thought is a great topic for everybody to kind of talk about is, hey, meeting your customers in person because not a lot of people are able to do that, or they
No.
do it right, and they kind of lose that. Let's kind of like start from the beginning, Jeff. Let's kind of like unwrap it. Um, when was kind of like the first time you kind of went and met a customer? What did that look like? And then kind of progression up until now. What does that look like for you?
Well, when are we talking about? Because I mean, a long time ago, one of my bosses introduced me when I was an account executive from the operations side. But it's like a mix. I was able to do the supply chain, logistics, and the sales part and the brokerage part all together in one. It wasn't strictly brokerage. So my boss introduced me as basically a closer. He was the client development guy. He would make the initial phone call, set up the meetings, and then I would go in, step my foot through the door, and basically close the deal on the operational side, logistics and supply chain by offering the tools that we had at the time, my company had, and then also just my experience and what I've dealt with in the niches that I've done, actually got in between the weeds, in the weeds over the last 10, 20 years. So that was my first initial step. And I remember my boss telling me, he said, when you know you're in is when you have a seat at the oak table. And I was like, what the hell is he talking about? It's that when you get ingrained and you're invited to come when they ramp up things and they talk about changes and new facilities and everything like that, and they invite you to come, that's one of the best feelings. I mean, this is when you know that you're going to start doing some business with them more than you ever expected. So I kind of carried that with me this time when I went down to Dallas.
Oh, from there. And Jeff, like for me, like I've always kind of mentioned, my history was that I've been at three places. The first place, I've never met a customer. It was
Yeah.
all strictly transactional, but hey, I was successful. But I've never met a customer. To my second job, I started meeting clients in person. And the one thing I've learned, especially with COVID and everything like that, is that you're able to like look at like the nonverbal cues when you're face to face,
Exactly.
right?
Right.
That's my number one thing because there's so many times, like how many times, Jeff, have you sent an email or you sent a text and then you're
You
kind of
don't.
reading into it wrong? Like maybe they're blunt about it and they're like, oh my God, maybe they're mad at me or something like that, right? But it's not the case at all, right? So I think like that nonverbal cues, being able to kind of see people eye to eye. I'm a big eye to eye person,
Me
having
too.
that posture and just understanding, right? From that point of view. Jeff, have you ever been, obviously we'll talk about the good ones, but
Yeah.
have you ever been in meetings where like you're like, oh man, this is not,
Oh,
this is
yeah. It definitely happens, and you talk about body language, and you can see that, especially when my base and where my company was actually in the town that I live in. So it was great to wake up in the morning and then drive like maybe 3 minutes and being in the office. But we had a lot of people on Long Island, Rhode Island, all around the metro area, around New York and New Jersey. And we used to drive for hours on end, especially going out towards the Montauk and out in that area. And you think that things are going to happen and happen well. And to your point, that body language just tells you so much as you're trying to uncover things and you're listening to what's being said and you're trying to understand and absorb that. And you start asking the questions and you start seeing them going like this, and like they're fishing, right? They're fishing for answers and all of that, and it's just not going right, and that's okay. That's not a failure. It's more of a lesson, because what you think is going to be a great meeting, to your point, talking to them over the phone, sending the emails, setting up that meeting, you're like, oh man, this is going to be good. Things are going to work out exactly the way you plan. And it goes south on you. And that's okay. That's okay. That's part of the business. And once you're able to understand that and accept no and spend that time on the road, let's put it this way. If you never spent the time on the road or even made an attempt to go visit, you wouldn't know if you would get this or not. So it's always important to take that lead and that leap of faith and go, no matter which way you look at it. If the door is open, throw that body through there and throw it hard and just lay things out on the line. And the other thing too is you find out whether or not, and Dan will agree on this, it's about the congruency, right? To see if you see eye to eye and whether or not you're going to mesh, and if you're going to really work as a single unit. Because in most cases, a lot of people think in their own ways, you think this way, and it's just not going to work. So it is important, very, very much so, to go, even if you're going to fail. It's all right.
Yeah, and you know what? And that's the thing, right? That's with many times we've had conversation with people that it just didn't work out or anything like that, and it's perfectly fine because the one thing I love about face to face is that it
Mhm.
removes distractions, right? Like I know a lot of us we're always on our phones. There's so much content around us, right? Like if we're making a cold call or even send an email, we might get distracted. Even something as small as having the radio or music playing in the background, right? So I think like having that face to face, you put the phones down, you just have a genuine conversation.
Yeah.
Jeff, it reminds me of like the first time I've actually went to a meeting, and I went with two of my bosses. And as we're driving there, they both kind of mentioned, "Hey, Ryan, this is your first one. Let us kind of take the lead, guys, because these guys are they're experienced guys on this." And you know, I'm sitting there, so it's the three of us, and then it was three of their people as well, and they're talking everything like that, and just hearing the back and forth. It wasn't like a battle or anything like that, but just to hear that, wow, just that rapport that they were building. And I realize, like you always kind of say, you don't talk freight, right? And those
No.
conversations. What are some kind of tips that you kind of do when you're kind of meeting somebody, and maybe kind of like going backwards? Let's say you bring on a new customer. At what point are you looking at to go and actually meet them in person?
Well, it really all depends. It depends on the kind of phone calls that you have, the communication through email, which gives you kind of an idea on whether or not they're going to accept the meeting. They might just blow you off and say, you know what, I just don't have time. Let's try 3 months. And then 3 months later, you make that call, send an email, and they keep on pushing off. So, when you do get that one and you do have the opportunity to go meet them face to face, like, again, you have to go and do it. And the way that I work, and it's really funny. And I was talking about my ex-boss, who was the client development guy, who used to do, all the calls and set up the meetings and everything. Well, when I went down to Dallas, my ex-boss was there with me because it was an old customer of his, because he kind of retired and he brought me in there. So it was like reverse roles. It was really crazy. I just started laughing. To make a long story short, where he used to do all the talking and I used to just sit back and kind of learn, he didn't say anything during this meeting. I did all the talking and he did all the listening. And the funny thing about it is, now he came out of retirement because he wants to work for me. So it's really, really funny how these things happen. I don't talk about freight when I go to these meetings because it's obvious. If you really think about, they know who you are, where you came from, and the objective is to move their freight. But mine is to understand and uncover the operational aspects, logistics and supply chain issues that they're having. And so I hone in on that part of the business. Again, it's not about the freight, it's about the understanding and the issues and problems that they have and being able to find that hidden bank. I always say the hidden bank because every operation out there, logistics and supply chain, has an issue. And if you're good at what you do, you're able to ask those particular questions to uncover little issues that sometimes are much larger than what you think. And then that's how the momentum starts rolling. So it really all depends, but don't talk about freight. Any shipper out there, I mean, John Brewer, I can name a lot others, but I'm just saying he doesn't want to hear that kind of stuff because he knows you're going to talk about freight. And so go in there and surprise them. Don't talk about freight.
And you know what? That's the best thing, and that actually kind of segues into something that I like, is that when you're in person, like a lot of times when you're behind a screen, you're talking on the phone or you're doing emails, people kind of say, don't make small talk, like don't, if you're calling a shipper, don't ask, hey, how's your day going? But being face to face, that's where the opportunity kind of comes, right? Because you get to have those conversations like, hey, I'm in your area. How are things going and things like that. And you're not talking about freight. You're building a relationship. Jeff, I want to ask you, let's say there's a lot of viewers on our show watching. Maybe some of them haven't done a face-to-face interview meeting with a customer. What are some tips, and not necessarily tricks, maybe trick or treat
No.
today being Halloween, but what are some preparation tips that you would give to somebody? Let's say if they have already booked that meeting and they're like 30 days out or 2 weeks out. What advice would you give them?
Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Don't be somebody that you're not. When you start really think about everything prior to that meeting, it kind of goes south on you. You kind of know inside you what you need. So many different questions out there. The thing is just don't overthink it, and don't be scared and overtalk the person you're meeting with. Be more of a listener than a talker. And then, because what you hear is going to open up more questions, right?
Yes.
If you start asking questions right off the bat, they're going to think that, oh, you're a know-it-all, you're doing all these things. It's not about that. Pry. Look up that company, what they're doing, how they're doing it. A lot of, you can go on the websites and you can figure out what a company does and their product lines. And you look at that person that you're going to be meeting with, and you look at their background and you figure out where they've been in and what the niche is. Is this guy all over the place, or has he been in automotive his whole entire career? Then you can start honing in to the conversation that needs to be had. But don't overthink it. Really, because you're going to start messing up really bad. You really will, because the nerves start getting in there. Am I going to be successful and all this? And people do really stupid stuff before they walk in there. They brush their hair like 100 times. They make sure their tires on really nice. God, just be you, man. Don't try to be someone you're not. Be authentic. Be genuine. There'll be more there'll be more acceptance on that side than going in there and being the biggest animal in the room. I'd rather be small and let them be large, and then by the end of the meeting, vice versa, and you leave on very good terms. So it's about uncovering, like you said too, Ryan. You're trying to build a long-term business relationship, so you can talk even outside of what you went there for. Hey, did you watch a Yankee game yesterday, or
Yeah.
something like that? Just don't be that guy that or girl that goes in there just like bum, 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 bum. These guys get
Yeah.
hammered all day long. So
And like it's just funny kind of say that because like a lot of times when you go into a face-to-face meeting, you'll have all these like PowerPoint presentations ready, and you'll have all these things that you want to talk about. And for me, Jeff, when I do face-to-face, I don't prep a script, but like I always have like three things in sight that I want to find out, like three motives, and those are the things that I want to find out before leaving there because I've never been in a meeting, and Jeff, maybe you can agree or disagree, but I've never been in a meeting that we did the meeting and the customer was like, "Okay, here, have all my business." This was just another step, a little step on the ladder, building
yeah,
that. Like even it's like your first impression too, right? That you're able to kind of put like the face to the name, and I like that you said that you want to go in there small because the meetings
yeah,
that I've been on, Jeff, is that my boss's boss, sorry, the customer's boss is always there too, right? So you want to kind of be good, but you don't want to leave the room and then his boss or her boss is asking, "Hey, what kind of idiot did you bring to our place?" Right? Like you want to see knowledgeable, but you want to be able to um, have that ability with them. Um, at what so Jeff, like we've talked about, okay, you've set up that meeting already. Let's say something you're already doing business with them 6 months, a year, or anything like that. Is there certain circumstances that you look at? Maybe it's like a service failure or something's kind of going wrong, or even when things are going right. Is there a certain time in your business that you're like, okay, I gotta scrap my plans right now and go meet my customer in person instead of talking to them on the phone or an email?
yeah. It really depends on it, right? Because the one thing you don't want to do is that if you have a meeting already set up and something goes wrong between this time and that meeting, don't wait for the meeting.
Mm,
You have to get on the line right away or email. Email, no, that's like, kind of like wimping out, so to speak. It's
yeah.
like, oh, this is really bad. He doesn't want to talk to me. That's the reason why he's sending me an email. No, if you want to engage, you get on that phone and, tell them what they best way to do. Tell them what they want to hear. Tell them what they don't want to hear, and just be honest about it. If something's failing, tell them about it. Tell them before they tell you. If you're on top of your game and you've got complete control over that customer, don't wait for things to go wrong and they contact you. You see it, you feel it, call them, let them know. I did it. I did it about 9 months ago. Something was just going horribly wrong. The carrier just wasn't, pulling its weight, and I saw it coming. And I knew they were going to call me, and I was like, I'm going to beat them to the punch. And I did, and I pulled it. It was good business. I pulled it, and next thing you know, I started getting other lanes on top of that because he liked it. He liked that I was able to pull something that was just not working out. And that's the way you build a long-term business relationship. I'll be blunt, don't bullshit them.
Yeah.
Don't do that, because you're going to get caught with your pants down around your ankles. You will. I'm telling you right now. I guarantee it. Just tell them, good service providers tell the truth. Their honesty and integrity is first and foremost. If you're in this business, that's the only way to do business.
And you're so right. And Scott brings up a great point here. Like even with like in meeting is like like authenticity is key. Start by saying, "Hey, I'll be in the area visiting. Can I take you out to lunch or bring your team donuts?" And that's the number one thing I think.
Oh,
instead of kind of having that transactional. I know with me doing like face to face with customers, that's actually what I say. Like I'll be in the area, and you'll make the time for them. And if people kind of say, hey, am I going to be more productive in the office, like staying home and working, or am I going to be losing productivity by going and meeting somebody in person? But I feel like you can't measure that, right? Because these
I
are
got to tell you something on this one because I've been doing this for a long time, and let's just go back to Scott's comment there. A lot of guys, when they're struggling, women, or let's just say sales reps. Oh, hi. Hey, Jeff, how you doing? You know what? I'm going to be in the area. I'm going to be visiting some other customers out there. And hey, if you have an hour, or less, maybe 15 minutes, I'd love to stop by. Oh, who are you visiting? Okay, boom. They tell you who they're visiting. Oh, yeah. I know them. They're right down the street. So what I did is that I called up that customer. And I said, hey, are you dealing with so and so? Do you like that carrier that you're using? This guy wants to come and visit. Oh, by the way, he said that he just visited this morning. Is he a nice guy? He never stopped by.
Yeah.
I've been doing it a long time, and when you see something, you already know that the guy's bullshitting you. I'm just being frank. Okay, because why can't the guy say, you know what, I'd love to come out and visit you. I'm not going to be in the area, but your business is important to me. I'd love to stop by. I want to see your operations, what you're doing, how you're doing it. Do you mind if I stop by? That's it. Boom. But there's some smart shippers out there that will trace people. I know a
As
few.
they
I've done
should,
it
right?
myself.
No, as they should, right? And I think, like it just comes back to being authentic. But coming back to it, like you don't, like anytime we've kind of like scheduled in face meetings, we've always tried to book like 3 or 4 meetings in that same area, right? And you always have that like one anchor, like I'm. You know what, Jeff? I've never met a customer in person as I've never done business with them. So every customer
Mhm.
that I've met in person, I've been doing business with them. So
There you
there's
go.
already that rapport there and kind of go from there. But I know like maybe this is a different subject, but even like going to trade shows, right? Like shippers are not at trade shows, but their sales guys are. And who's better to talk to you about a business and operations than another sales guy from a company, right?
Oh, sure.
That's one of my tricks, like before I call a shipper, I actually call the sales team and have conversations with them, because they're willing. Most of the time, sales guys or women, they're responsible for who they use as carriers because they're like, hey, this is my customer. Use Ryan on this one. Do not use, even if they're cheaper and like that, they'll factor that in. But having those conversations with your person, like your customer in person, I feel like it just increases engagement and participation. Right. And you want that back and forth because it's not gonna be beneficial that you're going there and presenting. And I think that's a big thing to like that people should take away is that when you go to an in-person, you don't want to be presenting. You're not doing a TED talk, you're not doing a podcast like we are, you're there for a conversation, and that's two parties
Exactly.
just engaging and having that. Because if you're presenting, you got a slideshow, hey, this is the company I'm with. If you're going through your company's profile, like the PDF or the slideshow, I feel like you're already lost before you even started, right? Like, what do you kind of think? What are some kind of tips that you personally have for kind of keeping that engagement going outside of freight, Jeff?
Yeah, and it's funny because I always have a presentation in my briefcase when I go. I hardly ever bring it out because a lot of these shippers, they're very, very smart. And before you even step in their door, I would say probably a high percent in the 90s are going to look you up and already know your background and who you work for and their capabilities. So there's really no need to do a presentation. I mean, we used to do that years and years ago. It was just what we call the dog and pony show, right? That was it. It's just semantics. You're there, you start doing this, you're wasting time. That's all you're doing. And they're just sitting there and it's like, but just be authentic and have a purpose. You want to be meaningful. You want to bring value, whatever it may be. Everybody has different value. And then you want to leave there on good terms. Hey, do you mind if I follow up with you in a few weeks? Listen, I saw your operation. I know you're crushed. I'll tell you what, you give me a call when you have some free time. Put it on them. I mean, a lot of them, they won't call you, but the ones that do engage you and do reach out, that's the golden egg right there. And it does. And the funny thing about it was when I went down to Dallas, I didn't even think about it. To your point, Ryan, you're right. I was going down there for one purpose, and then I said, "Hey, wait a second. I have a customer in Richardson. I have a customer in Grand Prairie." So I made a call like literally a day before, and I told them who I was visiting right up front. And I said, "They're 26 miles away. I'd love to see your operation. Can you fit me in?" Boom, was able to do that. So yeah, if you're going on those long trips, try to make it a day's worth of traveling and seeing these operations. A great time, to build relationships. That's for sure.
And like even with like I'm a firm believer, yeah, book multiple meetings if you're gonna go out and do these things. And I think like it's important to like leave the meeting with next steps. I
Yes.
think like, hey, it's never just like a handshake and then boom, we're gone. Because every meeting I've been in is like they'll talk about their opportunities, things that they need help with. So we'll kind of put it on them, like, okay, you've told us that you want us to give us rates on this, or you want a solution on this. I'll get this back to you by next week, Wednesday, Thursday. I don't know, Jeff, I don't know about you, but all my meetings are happening to be on Fridays because that's when the shipper is able to kind of put up their feet a little bit in the afternoon after lunch and things like that. But I know you went on a
Not in
Tuesday.
the beginning of the week. Not in the beginning of the week. And also another thing too. You're talking about events and going to conventions and all of this, and that there's not shippers there. There's sales reps, and they're doing all this. Here's what I found, and I haven't gone yet, but I do want to go to a few next year. When you have friends like Scott or yourself, and we all meet in at some event somewhere in the United States. Here's one thing that's a takeaway from there. Everybody has their own niche. If they look at your profile, you look at theirs, and you're not really qualified or you don't like working in that niche, but your friend does. When you start having those conversations, when you finally meet face to face instead of on LinkedIn or a phone call, things happen. Magic happens. Oh, really? You do that? Well, listen, I have a customer, and if you can help out my customer, why don't you take a look at their flatbeds? I'm doing their van moves, or reefer moves, whatever it is. I'll send you some information, whatever. It's like sharing, and it puts feathers in their hats, especially if you're a good service provider and that you can knock it out. I mean, what's a good reference from your customer to, even a competitor there that knocks it out? You make little things on the side, and it does work out. Some people are like, "Oh no, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not going to share that kind of stuff," because they're so protective. If you're good at what you do, you don't have to be protective and scared that you're going to lose your customer. Because if you're scared that you're going to lose your customer, then you're doing something wrong. That's the way I look at it, right? That fear mechanism. What happens if somebody else comes in that's better than me? What have I not been doing? Oh, blah, 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 blah. And then it starts just getting overwhelming. So
Well, I even think like with shows, like I love going to trade shows. I go to a bunch of different ones, and even like the most boring ones I'll go to. Like I remember I went to one that was like literally called a Concrete Expo, and I'm like, Jeff, if you get to know me, man, I don't care about gardening, I don't care about construction, like in terms of doing that stuff, right? But anyways, I went. But just a tip for anyone who's going to trade shows and things like that, what I do is that I reach out to the customer before I go before the trade show and say, hey, I'm going to be there. Which rep of your company is going to be there? And they'll usually tell me, they'll say, hey, it's Steve, it's Chris, they're going to be working it. And when I get to the show, I'll be like, hey, so and so from from your company actually said, hey, this way. And then they kind of like glim up a little bit. They're like, oh, wow, oh yeah, we know that person. And then they have that genuine conversation with you. And this is something that I do, Jeff. Maybe it's a little bit new age or something like that. But when I have that conversation with the sales rep, I'll make sure to get somebody to take a picture of us, and then I'll send that to my customer like the day after and be like, hey, I had an amazing time with Chris. He told me all about what you guys kind of do, whether it be like you guys build equipment or you guys do X, Y, Z. And then that kind of like gives you it gives you credibility. And I think that's one of the most important things too. Like when you meet a customer face to face, or even anybody from the company, it's face to face. And it's funny you bring up this point because I saw this on LinkedIn on the weekend and I thought it was such an amazing strategy. I forget the name of the person, but there is another logistics professional. He drives Uber. where there's warehouse
Yes,
like to his customers and
yes,
stuff
I
like that,
saw
right?
that,
So he'll pick up workers in this Uber time, get
and
paid
he
for it,
finds
and then
out.
have that conversation
Awesome.
already, right? And it's just awesome to
It's
kind of
awesome.
think
I
outside the
started
box
laughing.
with that, right? I thought that was really, really cool to think about. But I think like having that face-to-face interaction, we went through COVID. I know
Mhm.
Jeff, I personally am not a fan of Zoom or like Teams. I'll do it if I have to, but how many
Right.
times it's like you get on like, oh my God, like, can you hear me properly? Can you see me
I
properly?
know.
And then in your head, you're like, do I turn the video on or off? And then it's like all these kind of nitpicking, but it's like when I'm face to face, it's one of the best things you can do. My advice is honestly go in prepared. Always
Yeah.
have something ready to go. Have some next steps, and Jeff, well, what's something that you like we talked about meetings that went sideways, and then you maybe follow up in like 3 months or things like that. What is something that what like tell us a story. Like I would love to hear a story from you
I
where
could tell you,
hey,
I could tell you a really good story that happened to me, where somebody was trying to sell me something. It happened like 2 weeks ago, and I started laughing, and my partner was on the meeting as well. So it was a Teams meeting, and this guy, I'm not going to mention any names, but literally, he did the meeting from his car. He was vaping during the meeting, and he was listening to music in the background. And I'm like, I mean, I was having a sidebar with my partner. I was like, "Can you believe this effing guy, man?" I says, "This guy's trying to sell us this freaking thing," and it's just like the guy had absolutely no clue. And then he wanted to show us stuff on his computer, his laptop, and he was literally doing what we're doing now on Teams and taking his laptop, and he turned it around. He goes, "Can you see this?" I was
oh
like,
gosh, yeah.
I'm like, I'm like, that was like the worst sales thing that I ever saw in my whole entire life. And I was like, how's the dude doing business? It was just like totally inept on tools, on doing things right. But that's the funniest, like the worst thing that I've ever seen in my whole entire life of doing that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's about being prepared, right? And kind of get sticking
Oh,
up with
it's
technology and things like
terrible.
that. And I'm a firm believer, like you always kind of be prepared, like never going with a script, but always be prepared, And those are things where, hey, I want to bring up this point, and a tip that I kind of did. I was talking to this prospect last week, and their Q3 earnings report just came out, right? And I literally attached that to the email, and then we had a call later on, but we just discussed that, like, hey,
Are you
congratulations, like
doing
nice
good?
job. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was going good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You think I would send it if it was bad? Well, you know
Oh,
what? That's
oh
the
yeah, yeah,
opportunity as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, if it was bad, right? That might be
Yeah,
an opportunity to
yeah,
spark up questions on something that went terrible. It's like, yeah, you're doing great in the second quarter, man. Your third quarter sucked. What's going on? What happened? Where did you fail? Where did and you start digging into it. Oh, this facility, this, that, and it's that opens up doors too. So, there are positives and negatives.
of course.
So
And as we're kind of wrapping it up, so I think like the biggest strategies for us is like be authentic. Have a plan. Have some motives in there. Know what you're kind of getting out of it. Don't go there just to waste time. Like have the small talk and things like that, but get to business, right? Because that's why you're there, and that's why they're taking the meeting as well, right? So we want to thank everybody for coming out this morning. It's an amazing, impactful episode. Please do catch us back on the replays at 12 p.m. and 3 p.m. Eastern time on Facebook, YouTube. We got LinkedIn, and Dan was saying as well, we're on Twitter as well, Elon Musk's new platform. And with that being said, hey, you know what? Funny enough, what's this? I like Gunner. I want to actually get to this because Gunner, good morning, my friend. I love that you're a wrestler. I'm a huge wrestling fan. So when I followed you and I saw that you're a wrestler as well, I was like, oh my God, this guy's like the best of both
I
worlds.
know that's so
And
funny.
so to answer this question, I'll ask, answer this one, Jeff, and then I'll kind of give my thing. What do you like? Do you like Zoom or do you like phone?
Oh man, I like what we're on right now. I mean, I got to get the geek squad over here, and I tell you all the time because I'm always cutting out, and it just bothers the crap out of me. But I mean, Zoom, I don't know, and Teams sucks. I'm sorry, right? I mean, come on, you got to agree. You got to agree with me. I mean, it's like sometimes you can hear something or you're not, and the camera. I mean, it's like. No, I mean I like the restream that we're on right now. Except mine keeps on cutting out, and I know why. But what are your thoughts? What are your
You know,
thoughts on it? I mean, Gunner has a good point on this.
Yeah, gunner's
Uh,
the man. For me, I think it's gonna suck when I say this because I'm not really answering the question, but I like both. Like so the way that I see them, calls, Zooms, emails, texting, LinkedIn messages, all these different things, is that I see them as another way of communication, right? And that's
yeah,
personal thing. So when I'm on the phone, I can't see. I know what I'm kind of looking to ask. And then with Zoom, I want to see them face to face. I
yeah,
like to kind of see that. I always turn my video on. I think it's really important if you're going to do a Zoom. The one thing I don't like about Teams is that most of the times it's just done for audio calls. But I'm a big fan of like face to face. And it doesn't.
yes.
I know, Scott. We're gonna get shut down by Microsoft, but like it's awesome to kind of see, and it's really cool to do both, like have them all part of your I want to say repertoire.
Yeah,
Sorry, it's part of your tools, right? And maybe I'll throw a wrestling reference here for Gunner as
yeah,
he asks the questions.
exactly.
Like you're not gonna do 20 suplexes. You're gonna come and do maybe a 5-star frog splash, or you're not. You're trying to like read the crowd and kind of go from there. So with
You
that
know
is that.
something like really quick, just really quick, right? It's like women and men shopping, right? Women, they can't buy a lot of stuff over the internet because they're like the touchy feely. They want to go into the mall, they want to see it, they want to feel it. That's the exact same way shippers love to shop. All right. They get the real feeling from being face to face with somebody. They can see it, they don't have to touch it, but they feel it. They can read their body language and all this you know, over Zoom or Teams. You can't see if the person's twiddling their fingers or writing down notes. You have absolutely no idea. But the real part of that meeting comes out when you can physically be there, see that, feel it, and understand what's going on. So there's nothing better than face to face for sure.
Nothing better face to face.
That's it.
Centurion Trucking, our motto is people before profit. Today's market requires more transparency, consistency, and focus on what our clients need to win. Centurion Trucking and American Logistics are poised to help their clients achieve and surpass their targets. If you're looking for a team that honors your needs, dreams, and aspirations, then get a hold of Daman at American Logistics or Centurion Trucking and start designing your career